Let's welcome on the stage Ms. Inma Martinez.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to start by saying that these are the places where people really get ignited and you network and eventually you start out a venture, and I hope that you can all achieve these. When we talk about space, we consider space the biggest place of action today because across cultures and millennia, humankind has always explored. We have explored everything that we could encounter on Earth. And now we look at the stars and we're venturing into space to make it our ground. So it's not a dream anymore, it's a reality. And I hope that I will make you see it just like all of us here that have come to share with you the experience. And as a scientist, I usually go around the world talking about, what technology can do for society, how we create progress. But in 2018, the European Space Agency invited me to collaborate with them with one of the most important missions in space for inspiration, meaning we want to inspire the private sector, both the funding and the commercial side of it, to come to space and help us build the progress of the future. And if you really want to get to know the super action that goes around in space, follow these two astronauts, Paolo Nespoli, and currently aboard the ISS, Matthias Maurer, Astro Matthias, because these are the people that work in the labs that we have orbiting Earth. This is where all the action, the scientific and applied science is happening. And also, Astro Paolo is the best pilot that any space agency has ever had, because this is the guy that has piloted the most missions, including American astronauts, just as a small note. Now, before I moved into technology, I used to work in infrastructure finance. And many people think that infrastructure finance is building bridges, water projects, construction. But it's not about just building stuff. It's about creating economic progress. So this is the Öresund Bridge, which connects Malmö in Sweden with Copenhagen. And when we built and financed this project, it was the last one I did, it wasn't because Sweden and Denmark had a traffic problem. Oh my God, so many cars. What are we going to do? No. It wasn't about cars. It wasn't about traffic. It was about creating an economic zone. It was about enhancing communication, bringing people into the area. And 20 years later, the Meditech of Sweden is there. Incredible startups are hubbed there. And the region generates close to 30% of the combined GDP of Sweden and Denmark. It's not a joke. Infrastructure creates economic wealth, and that's what we're building in space. So when infrastructure addresses the problems of the world, inevitably natural resources come. And when we build water regeneration progress, it's not just about cleaning the water around big urban centers. Today, we are addressing very, very big problems in which the space industry is coming to help us solve, such as arable land is decreasing, so we'll run out of food eventually, and also the resources from water. Water is one of the biggest natural resources we need to look after. And the space industry has been monitoring this for ages. But most importantly, energy. We used to think that the Earth was big, but currently, in this new century, we've noticed that humanity is big. We're reaching very soon the 10 billion humans on this tiny, minute, very fragile planet. And energy in this big digital society is going to be the resource that we're going to need if we continue to develop digitally into the future. So the space industry has created a concept about in situ reutilization, meaning create energy out of everything that is available to you in sustainable ways. And according to calculations, compound calculations, we'll probably run out of energy in about 200 years. And by 2060, even if you were putting photovoltaic all over the Earth, it would not be enough for the amount of energy, the watts that we will need in the future. So we need to explore new ways of creating new energies, and that is precisely what we're doing in the space industry. Biofuels, chemical compounds, even formulations that are creating at zero gravity. That's what we do out of Earth. So to show you how something so enormous can really happen and be a reality, I always like to explain to people how the internet began. And I like this quote from the famous film Lawrence of Arabia. If you haven't seen this film, I encourage you to see it, because it's the story of an outsider, something that deviated from the norm. He decided to leave the British Army. He had a feeling of how a battle could be won in a complete different way, and he created a revolution, which is exactly what happened to us when the CERN, the famous 30th of April in 1993, released the internet to the world. I was at Goldman Sachs, I was a young analyst, and that thing came through the fax. Now, as you can appreciate, it's not signed by Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the internet. It was actually signed by the bureaucrats. And it's more a letter of disclaiming, like, here's the internet, these are the servers, this is the HTML code, you can use it for whatever you want to, but if something goes wrong, the CERN has nothing to do with this hell. That's how the internet was made public. So in the early days, when I was a technologist, I used to arrive at meetings where people would not understand what the internet was, and I had to start the meeting by saying, hello, my name is Inma Martinez, I come from the internet. And that really got their attention. You're like, this is the Star Trek weirdo. And look at us now. We're living in a digital society. So our efforts to create a civilization out of Earth are just now like these two pieces of paper. They're beginning to happen in about 20, 30 years, even sooner, as I will show you. It will be a reality. So think about that. When, in the 1950s, two CERN scientists and administrators began to conceive the notion that Europe should probably create space ventures and missions, Europe was depleted by a horrendous war. Our souls were crushed. Our economies had to be rebuilt. But yet, our DNA of explorers, which fundamentally is part of a huge DNA that we all have in this room, could not sit still. We had to explore. We have to join this new venture. So they are the founding fathers of CERN, of ESA, but with a slight twist. They wanted the European space efforts to be collaborative, not political, like other space agencies, but for scientific collaborations and commercial endeavors. And that is exactly what ESA has delivered to the world. It is the space program that works amicably and collaboratively with every single space agency. Everybody is our friend. We have added value to everyone. And that's the spirit of entrepreneurial endeavors in Europe. So at the beginning, when NASA was sending, and Roscosmos were sending orbiters, the Europeans wait, and then they go and launch incredible stuff. So here's Rosetta, which is a comet hunter. What is that? It means it latches onto a comet at high speed and rides it like a big kahuna wave. And Rosetta is the only comet hunter that has achieved that, getting data as much data as it could of the composition of this comet, of every single temperature reading, the flares, and also close to 70,000 images that were sent back to Earth with its camera, OSIRIS. So now, when you think about Silicon Valley and what we can do in tech, think about this. Think about sending images from a burning comet on fire as you are latching onto it. That's the stuff of dreams. That is what we do. And of course, we look after Earth. Now, we have moved from scientific missions, Rosetta, to commercial missions. The old Lagrange mission, which is studying this exoplanet, is now a commercial project. In May 2021, the ESA sent a request for information, request for proposals to many commercial companies to become consortiums and propose how they can come and help us in this mission. And also, they decided, okay, since this is going to be a commercial endeavor, let's just give it a name rather than Lagrange. And they even put the name to voting. So now it's called the Vigil mission. This is what we do. This is one of the biggest projects that has been tendered for commercial exploitation. And of course, we have been going to Mars for 15 years. We've been sending robots to exoplanets and to the Mars surface because eventually we realized that this is the twin brother of Earth. Mars was a planet that had a very similar biosphere to Earth. It's only that the sun radiation really burned everything to the ground. But we are putting our eyes there. So we do it in collaborations, in commercial partnerships. That's how ESA moves into these missions. And probably the biggest one right now, with a target of 2025, just in 3 years, is a human presence on the surface of the moon. A permanent base of humans on the moon. We have a permanent base orbiting the Earth, which is the ISS. It's been doing it for 20 years. But now this is our dream. Scientists living and working on the moon. Now, when the Americans agreed to collaborate with us, the Americans are building an orbiting station, Artemis, around the moon, kind of like the ISS, and we said, no, we're going to go into building a village. The Americans talk about going to the moon as going back to the moon, whereas we talk about moving forward to the moon. It's an interesting concept. We consider a space exploration, a movement towards progress, a movement towards, the innovation of our civilization. So these are the energy resources that we're planting there, and also who's designed this. One of the most famous architecture firms in the world, some that build the Sauer Steer in Chicago, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. So we have expanded into working with any industry that can help us visualize and execute this dream. And energy is what we're going to do there. We're going to create human labs that will live permanently there, but also trying to create energy resources. There is a massive deposit of water in the southern pole of the moon. We're going to put this base near the Shackleton Rim, but it will be about creating in situ reutilization. We're going to create fuel, energy, we're going to grow plants. We are going to attempt to have a presence on Earth's satellite. And every single industry involved in smart cities and urban planning are coming to the project. So this is a huge commercial project for ESA and for the space industries. It's about demonstrating that we can create new energy sources and that we can have working labs on the moon, which, by the way, is a horrendous place to live because it's full of radiation. The regolith, the dust of the Earth is just really attaching to your suit and everything. It's just a hell to live there, but we're going to put ourselves to the limit. This is what we do. So mining. Why are we mining the moon? because we want to experiment creating new sources of energy. And that little igloo, which has been designed by another architecture firm, Foster, in London, is 3D printed using the same regolith. So that node lands far away, all the dust settles, it then is transported to the base, it inflates, and then little robots will 3D print the igloo around it to protect the scientists from the radiation. All of this by 2025. So why do we do this? By the way, do you know that young man? Who it is? No? Do you know this man? Who is this man? Darwin. I don't know why in the school books they always show us Darwin as this creepy old man, when really, when he was 22, when he was young, is when he jumped aboard that ship, the Beagle, and spent 5 years circumnavigating the world, really building his theories of evolution, collecting fossils, making paintings of little plants. You know, he was young and he was exploring. He had a feeling that there was something out there that will reveal itself. And that's what we do, sending robots and landers and rovers to Mars. This is from ETH, the university where Einstein went in Zurich. Universities are collaborating. And also, who are these two gentlemen that look like posing for GQ magazine, looking very dapper? Well, actually, it's Humboldt, the biggest explorer, and von Plant, his friend from France. It wasn't glamorous. They walked on foot about 10,000 kilometers, and they climbed every volcano in South America without any equipment. And why? Because they were not just creating cartography, but they studied the fauna, the flora, and also they proved that there is lack of oxygen at high altitude, testing on themselves, which is what we also do aboard the ISS. A lot of medical advances have been achieved aboard the ISS. So what are we doing now aboard the ISS? One of the most fascinating ones, which is, I am an AI scientist, is testing how robots can help us with mental health. And of course, we have done all kinds of engineering and advanced medicine and the development of new materials. Zero gravity is a phenomenal place to create new stuff. Right now, the all-American lab, the all-node, has been rented to an American startup, Nanoracks, and they have these tiny little cubes where they run experiments for any company in the world. Do you want to do experiments on zero gravity? We'll just send it to the ISS. So it's commercial. Half of the ISS is commercial. This tiny robot tests how you're feeling. Are you tired? Do you miss home? It's not just a helping flying robot that can help you fix some of the fuses aboard the ISS, which, by the way, is always breaking because it's old. But it's also testing how you're feeling. It's one of the nicest and more intrepid uses of AI right now that is happening in the world. It's being developed at ESA. But where is the action? Have you heard the word cislunar economy? It's everything that we're going to build in terms of business between the Earth and the Moon. And this is the new rocket in town that is going to load up all of those nanosats and all the telecommunications of our century. If you look at this number of rockets, we have 5. 2 of them, PLD Space and Orbex, are startups. Startups. One from Spain and one from Scotland. And the others, obviously, they have been built by the big aerospace companies. This is the ground where entrepreneurs are coming to help us build progress. Now, when you have small rockets, you're launching small satellites, which is all that we need right now. So you don't need to go above the Kármán line. You don't need to go higher than 100 kilometers above the sea level. You can just do it with a small recoverable team. Much cheaper. So that means everybody can send payloads to space. And this was the technology that we helped for the last 20, 30 years the big satellite communications. So all the GEO, MEO, and LEO satellites around the Earth sending data and communications are connected to the internet and the microwaves and the fiber optics by these teleports. Telecoms are having a renaissance in our industry right now because we are digitizing the world. But here's the new telecoms, nanosats. And of course, Starlink is not the only company launching Wi-Fi satellites to the world. We also have a British company called OneWeb, who's been invested by real investors and companies in telecoms to actually do the same. But let me show you something very interesting about space. We collaborate in space. So OneWeb had an agreement with Roscosmos to send all of the satellites from Baikonur, which is the Russian port. And of course, with the war, Russia decided to go against the world, and it tore to pieces all of those contracts. So OneWeb could not do their launches. Guess what they did? They asked SpaceX if they could put their payloads in their rockets. Now, Starlink belongs to Elon Musk, their competitor, but Elon said yes, because space is collaborative. It's a very weird situation, but it's a nice point I want to make. When you come to space, you'll have friendly people that feel the same. We all need to help each other to achieve our goals. And this is a really nice example. Satellite data. Satellite data has become one of the key primers of many, many industries in digitalization. We are transforming sectors, engineering, infrastructure, not just climate change. It's because we have eyes in the sky. And one of the areas where I work, because I'm a chair of how AI is being introduced into the agriculture sector at the G7 OECD, Global Partnership for AI, this is my business. There are startups taking satellite data to create businesses, digital businesses, products and services for the agro industry. So if you're a company that wants to come into this arena, come and talk to me. But this is the best example of how space is coming into commercial. By the way, the data from the European satellites, Sentinel-1 and 2, is for free. You don't need to pay for it. So look, ESA already gives you for free something that's going to help you build a startup in agrotech. And managing the space debris. Anybody wants to help us fix this problem? It's huge. Because the number of satellites and nanosats that we're about to launch is going to increase, and we still have the old pieces of junk that are just floating around and that no one has decommissioned. The problem with having debris around is that it just collides with everything else that is working, and it can destroy a lot of value. By the way, this is one of the duties aboard the ISS. Getting rid of junk. So they come out with the Canadian and the Japanese robot just fishing out very old dead satellites and just decommission them. Cleaning on Saturday morning, yeah? But more. We're going for more. 4D printing. The additive are not just plastic. Many startups are investigating biomaterials that can help us build construction that is, reactive to thermal changes, also body parts that are going to be embedded in the human body and that will adapt itself to our biology. And what are we doing in space? Not just that. We're 3D printing rockets. Orbex in Scotland has commissioned a 3D printing startup to 3D print their engine. Now, when you 3D print an engine, it means it's not being assembled, so the combustion is happening in a super closed chamber. So you have better rendering of that engine. You have less escape. Now, this is the stuff that we need you to help us build. This type of innovation, this type of blue sky thinking. 3D printing used to be done in tiny machines, remember, makers? No. How about 3D printing a rocket? It can only come from the head of an entrepreneur. So, how big is the new space? It's enormous. Currently, 10,000 startups worth about $4 trillion US. And still, we have so many things to fix, so many things to address. What we need is your imagination, is the naivete of the entrepreneurs and the young scientists that think in creative ways. That is what we need, so that all of these missions and new ones can really address not just the problems that we need to solve here on Earth, which are a lot, but also help us venture into the galaxy, which is really our home, not just Earth. This galaxy is our home, and this is where we're moving. So if you want to see the report, it's produced by this analytics company, Space Tech Analytics, and just go and read where you could fit in. There's always a way in which an idea that you have could really make a lot of sense and add value in the space industry. So I wish you what we wish everyone at the beginning of each mission: Godspeed. And what does it mean? The real translation is, may the force be with you. And that's what I wish all of you, and Latvia, who has recently joined as a full member the European Space Agency, and everyone in this room and anybody that is connecting. Ad Astra, let's dream around the stars, what we can achieve there, even if it's difficult. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Inma. Wow. You had me on every single word in this presentation. Kudos to you. Wonderful, wonderful presentation. You see in front of you a room full of scientists, of entrepreneurs, of people who might have latched on to this idea of being part of this huge space race. So in front of us are 2 days of talks, of discussions, of presentations, of people networking. With your experience, as a person who has experienced the birth of the internet, of space commercialization, what would you say? What are the best ways to be a part of this all? You showed the whole big graph and to check that, but what are the ways that maybe me as an entrepreneur who has already started doing something, how can I latch on to this? Maybe I don't have an idea. What can I do? Maybe you can give some pointers to people how they can be involved more into this big dream.
Well, the big dream is if you have ideas about how to solve transportation, telecommunications, how to create energy sources, how to further meditech, biomaterials, all of that has room in the space solutions of ESA. But even if you have something that has nothing to do with this, join ESA solutions, because sometimes you arrive in a room and you see what everybody else is building, and then you say, no, 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 that should be done like that. And that is the blue sky thinking that happens when you work in the science community. But the scientists of today, the young people of today, working applied science. And at least I'm talking about my students. You want to build science that's going to help, that's going to solve something. This is the mindset of the young people of this century. And that is what we need, and that's why we have created all of these things, and we'll create more.
Ladies and gentlemen, she's a mountain mover. Ladies and gentlemen, Inma Martinez.
Thank you, thank you.